Selection, modification, and administration of assessments for students with exceptionalities. Important facts and information for educators. We want to know where students are entering the learning so we can create learning experiences that move their learning forward and create assessments that monitor their growth as they exit the learning experiences. Welcome. The purpose of this video is to introduce the elements of selection, modification, and administration of assessments for students with exceptionalities. The exceptionalities emphasized are learning disabilities, ADHD, and gifted special gifts or talents. Questions to ask before you start selecting or creating an assessment. What are the goals for my students on IEPs or my students that are involved in the RTI process? What accommodations or modifications are needed for my students on IEPs? What instructional objectives do I plan on assessing for all my students? What are the best ways to assess the planned instructional objectives for the students that I currently teach? What is my plan for measuring each student's growth on the planned instructional objectives, student RTI goals, or IEP goals? Anticipate possible assessment challenges by being proactive rather than reactive in the assessment process. All students can struggle during an assessment. Knowing your students' strengths and weaknesses allows one to be proactive to develop or select an assessment suited for your students. The more barriers that can be reduced during an assessment, the more accurately the assessment will reflect the student's growth. Students with a learning disability may struggle with the reading level of the assessment. A student with ADHD may be distracted by their environment or the layout of the assessment. A student that is talented or gifted may not put forth their best effort if they feel they are not being challenged, and the test truly assessing what they are capable of doing. Assessment selection. We want to select assessments to assist with the identification of prerequisite or baseline skills of the learner. We want to select success criteria to determine mastery. This is helpful for all students. Develop or select assessments that are engaging to students, thus motivating students to readily show their growth. This in particular works with our gifted and talented students. We want to select assessments that allow students to interact with it in multiple ways. For example, paper, pencil, or being able to utilize technology to best suit the learner or someone who has a learning disability. We want to select questions that are aligned with specific objectives or goals. All of our students need to know what they will be tested on. Select a test format that is uncluttered and has adequate white space on the page. Students with ADHD will become easily distracted if there's a lot of things on the page. Now we'll be talking about assessment modification. For students with ADHD, it's good to provide alternative settings in a quiet room free of distractions. To break down the assessment into smaller parts that may be taken over several different testing sessions. This is especially helpful for students with ADHD or have a learning disability. Modify by adjusting the reading level of the assessment. This is helpful for our students who are learning disabled. Provide word banks for assistance for those students who might have a learning disability. Highlight or underline key words in the questions or clearly indicate when a question requires multiple steps. This helps our students with ADHD stay focused and our students with learning disabilities to give them a guide as to what to expect. Allow a student to respond orally to written response questions. Students with a learning disability may need help as far as writing long paragraphs or organizing their writing, but can verbally tell you the answer. And allow choice in the assessment product. What is that final thing you are requesting of your students to do? And do they have a choice in how they give that product to you? Add depth or breadth to questions. This is helpful for our students who are gifted and talented, who are able to take their learning to that next level. And modify questions in a fair and unbiased way to fit the needs of the levels of the learners in the classroom without putting other learners at a disadvantage. A student only needs accommodations or modifications to ensure that his or her disability does not interfere with his or her chance for success in the classroom. So choose your modifications wisely. Assessment administration. Provide clear instructions. This is helpful for all of our learners. Allow extra time for processing and answering of questions. This is beneficial for our students who are learning disabled. Provide brief breaks with an opportunity to move around during a long test. This is beneficial for our students who have ADHD. Prompt individual students to refocus or to double-check their work. Provide an alternative setting, a quiet room free from distractions for your students who have ADHD. Repeating directions, give graphic cues or pair oral directions with written directions for our students with learning disabilities. Provide rewording of questions as needed for clarification. This is helpful for our students with learning disabilities who need a little additional help with the question. Allow students to move at their own pace, providing something to move on to after the assessment is complete. And change the assessment delivery to meet the needs of the learner in the classroom. After the assessment has been completed, it is that time then to review. Ask students for feedback on the assessment. What worked for them? What did not work for them? Use assessment data for reflection. Look at the data as a whole for all of the learners in the classroom, and look at the data from each exceptionality group that the assessment was selected or modified for. Plan or select the next assessment based on the feedback and data you received. Discuss assessment results with students, intervention specialists, and other instructors, supervisors, and parents and guardians as needed. Recognize that different classroom assessments may more effectively serve the intended purpose when they are selected, modified, and administered with your students' exceptionalities in mind. Learn more about assessing exceptional learners at the sites below. Thank you.